So these are my parents. My parents migrated to this country in the late 60s and early 70s. My dad came here in 1969 on a student visa to study mechanical engineering at the University of Minnesota. He went from Pune, India, which is a very warm place, to Minneapolis. I don't know. He never complained about it. To me, I've never heard him complain about it. So quite a jarring transition. And then my mom came a few years after they got married. And something that I really want to highlight when telling my family's migration story is that I'm sort of like a prime example of Asian migration to the US after 1965. As many of you probably know, there was a big change in immigration law in 1965, the Immigration and Nationality Act. And this made it very easy for people like my dad to get a student visa to study engineering, right? So this abolished the national origins quota, which was barring immigration from Asia. And then what's super important to note is that it gave priority to professionals that had specialized skills, right? People like my dad, he already had a bachelor's degree in engineering. He was coming to study at the master's level. It made it very easy for people to come to med school here from India and other parts of Asia. And so, of course, the model minority myth is then born. And why I think it's really important in this talk about Chardi, which doesn't seem so related to this, why I think it's so important to name this when telling my story is because that model minority myth being born affected my life in really profound ways. Because you can kind of go through all the stereotypes associated with the Asian model minority, and that's like literally what my parents were telling me growing up, right? They're like, math was the most important, right? Like I had to get straight A's. I got all sorts of subtle and not so subtle messages that like we work so hard for everything we do and we deserve it. And the model minority myth becomes a tool, really starting in 1965, becomes a tool to pit our community against other communities of color. And really, in particular, a tool of anti-Blackness, right? Because we know what's going on in 1965 in this country, right? Major upheaval, Black freedom movement, civil rights movement. And this becomes a tool of white supremacy, really. So Asians become a tool to perpetuate white supremacy, if it's a little bit of a, I'm not going to say the word I was about to say. But it starts with M and ends with F. But it's true, right? We Asian Americans, Indian Americans, even Sikh Americans find ourselves in this interloper space at times racially, where we get used, and sometimes we use ourselves, by choice against other communities of color, and somehow espouse that we're, if we worked hard and we can be making six figures like my dad eventually was, then what are these Black folks complaining about, right? What are these Latino immigrants complaining about, right? Like we did it, and it's such an ahistorical idea, but one that I think is especially important to think about right now as our communities are more and more pitted against each other. And thinking about like what happened in this election cycle leading up to the election, I think this authoritarianism requires us to be divided. Authoritarianism needs Indian Americans, needs South Asian Americans to buy into white supremacy to some extent, right? To buy into this meritocracy myth and perpetuate these ideologies. And it's kind of wild how many Indian Americans are actually in this administration, and that's no coincidence, right? Not to get into all the polling data, this is like a little bit of a rabbit hole, but we saw quite a big increase, especially from men of color across race, in flipping towards voting for he who shall not be named this last fall. And I do think the psychology of what's going on there has a lot to do with the psychology of the model minority myth, right? It's like, if we can just so white supremacy, white nationalism, buying into all this, buying into authoritarianism, becomes a way to just get maybe half a step higher on this ladder of hierarchy in this country, right? So if we buy into it, if we buy into the MAGA agenda, maybe that's gonna help us out just a little bit, just enough to get by another day. So it's obvious the work that needs to happen in white communities around this issue, but I think we less often have the honest conversation about the work that needs to happen in many of our communities of color as well, all which have been built on anti-Blackness and anti-indigeneity in many cases too. So, you know, speaking of model minority, my parents like tried, I guess, with the indoctrination. That's me, and yeah, I don't know who bought me that, but I did not have any choice in my outfits at the age of 1, but it certainly, the indoctrination didn't really did not work. I can't fix anything. I can't like change a flat tire. So like the handiness didn't work. But I'm pretty good in the kitchen, so I got that part.